The Oracle Network.
Welcome to Brew Crime, the podcast where we drink brews and talk crime, conspiracies, or whatever catches our attention. This is Mike and my co-host,
JT.
Woo-hoo.
Hi.
It's official. JT is new co-host.
You all, the interview process was so intense.
Yeah.
The amount of beer I had to ingest was amazing.
Yeah, lots of unpaid internship on the episodes, which will stay unpaid because we don't get paid.
Right. We do it because we love it and we're sadists.
Exactly.
Well, I am happy to be here. I am honored to be back in the mix of true crime and stuff. You know, I took a year off and I think I just needed some time away, and I also needed to find an awesome person to do this with a good schedule, somebody who's kind of level-headed. And you do a lot of construction, so I'd imagine a level's involved. So.
Well, I just tell people they're doing it wrong, so.
Well, but that means you know how to do it right. So.
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
So I appreciate it. Thanks for letting me join in, and I hope everybody's happy with the decision. And if you're not, leave a 3 out of 5 stars, and that's fine.
No, just leave a 5 out of 5 stars and say why
That's
you're
fine.
not happy.
There you go. Perfect. Because nobody reads that drivel. They just look at the stars.
Exactly. Yeah. Just let iTunes find more people for us.
Man, I went through some reviews on some of the other shows that I know about. Man, people are mean.
Yeah, they are.
It's like, I hate how you sound. And I'm like, this is literally how that person was born. Like, what do you want? Like, do you want, oh boy, huh? Do you want Mickey? Because this is ridiculous.
Yeah, no shit. So the theme for this episode is going to be crimes of British Columbia. We're going to keep moving with the provincial themes for a bit here. We might jump away from it for a little while and come back. We'll see. Or provinces or territories in Canada. So this one's British Columbia, my home province. There's going to be some real shitty people in this episode.
I'm assuming not a representation of the average population in British Columbia. Your nonverbals were not convincing. Nobody else can see them but me.
Yeah. Yes, no.
Oh man.
All right. So we're gonna flip a bottle cap to find out which one of us goes first for this episode.
Yes.
So JT has a Stone Brewing Company bottle cap, which has a gargoyle on one side, and then it's the backside on the other. So heads is the gargoyles.
Yep.
So I'm gonna call gargoyles.
You're gonna call gargoyles? It's tails.
Oh,
dang. And you know what? It probably has something to do with the fact that it is not flat. So
truth.
Consider this just like one of those like little grabber machines. It's rigged.
Yes, it is.
You know what? It's funny. We said we were going to flip, and we didn't explain whether you win or lose or what that means. So,
because we didn't actually think that through.
Well, no, that would make sense. Everybody's expecting that. So, Mike, ultimately, do you want to go first or second?
Hey, up to you.
Oh, don't be Canadian on me.
I can't help it.
For those people who have never really, I am from the United States.
Yes.
So this podcast is now international and spans 3 or 4 different time zones. So
yes, it's 3 hours different on each microphone.
Yes, and it's perfect because I can tell you the future. I know what happens. You know what? You go first.
All right, I will go first.
Yes. All that to say.
All right. Well, I didn't write a fancy smancy title for this story. So I'm just it's about Thomas Gordon Kosberg. A real piece of shit well, at least he was a real piece of shit things change. I don't know, but yeah. And this is a script by JT. He helped out, which was great because I was definitely running behind.
You're giving me a chance to do what I love. So,
Woohoo! Starts out with a quote. "Good God," he cried, can it be that I shall really take an axe, that I shall strike her on the head, split her skull open, that I shall tread in the sticky warm blood, break the lock, steal and tremble, hide, all splattered in blood, with the axe. Good God, can it be?" Crime and Punishment by Fyodor Dostoevsky, something like that.
Yep.
Was meant to be a study of guilt's impact on the mind. Themes like alienation from society, the psychology of crime and punishment, and the idea of the Superman and nihilism are all covered in this classic tale of Raskolnikov, a former student who is sickly and dressed in rags. All right, and now, before I fully get into the story, I'm going to do the beer pairing. And I went a little off the rails with this beer pairing, because I just went for a brewery that's in Vancouver, because this happens in the city of Vancouver. So this is Off the Rails Brewing Company, and it was actually their 6th anniversary beer.
Oh, nice.
And the beer name has nothing to do with it. The Imperial Porter, Big Heckin Chonker, and it's got a big fat cat on it, and it's chocolate birthday cake porter. It's 8.6% alcohol.
Yes. By the end of this show, it's gonna be a good case.
So it's definitely super, super black. Like, you can't see any light through it.
It's like our souls.
Yeah, exactly. Especially mine. Nice dark brown head on it. It's got lots of chocolate aroma. Really malty. Definitely like some brown sugar sweetness. I almost think there's like a note of some kind of fruit. And I think I just keep thinking cherry just because there's so many like the chocolate cherry cakes. I don't think it actually is that.
They actually just dumped a bunch of cream cheese frosting in there when they brewed it.
Probably. There also is the vanilla and lactose, so there's some of that sweetness too. But on the flavor, there's a little tiny bit of roastiness, but it's more sweet, more chocolate. There is that vanilla, a little bit of like sugary, like brown sugar thing going on from the cake.
Right.
Yeah, it's nice. I mean, it's not as sweet as it could be. It's not as thick as some of the beers when you get up into those like 11 and 12% alcohol ranges.
Right.
It's nice. This is a quote unquote easy drinking beer for me.
Hey, yo. No, I love a good stout. I think typically the beers that I like to drink are the ones that substitute as meals.
Yeah.
I prefer that, which definitely shows, I'm sure, but whatever.
Yeah, this one's a meal, but not a dessert. It's not that thick.
No. It's not like they just blended a cake and added just a little bit of hop and sent it out.
Well, they might have, I don't know, but going back to that whole quote from Crime and Punishment, that's just a story. This is just a piece of fiction thought up by the author, and although it's a classic and well respected, it is a story. The case I'm talking about today truly happened. The guilt felt, in some respects, much like the guilt felt in Raskolnikov, but the method of killing was near the same. The villain, a 16-year-old disturbed child. The victims, his family. This is a case of a failed system. It is a case that no one saw coming. This is the case of the Kosberg family murder, committed by Thomas Gordon Kosberg. Born on October 2nd, 1948, Thomas Kosberg was one of 6 siblings. His parents, Osborne and Dorothy, had 6 children, including Barry, Marianne, Gail, Vincent, Osborne Jr., and Thomas. They lived in Vancouver, Canada at 142 East 22nd Avenue. The house is still around. It's 5 bedrooms, 3.5 bathrooms, and 2,247 square feet of living space. I'm not sure where they put it all in that house or on that lot, but hey, there you have it. There's a lot of weird, like, shaped houses in Vancouver and skinny little lots and tall houses and basements.
That's what I saw. Yep.
Yeah. The Vancouver specials are tall and skinny and long. It's true.
And that's not even the houses. Okay. But
Kosberg attended General Wolfe Elementary School and Sir Charles Tupper Secondary School, where he spent time learning how to spell, market, and burp Tupperware. No, that's not right. Forget I said that. And I know where Sir Charles Tupper School is. I've never even heard of General Wolfe Elementary School. I don't know if maybe it's changed its names, but yeah. I don't know that
I don't know if
school.
it's anything like the US recently. We're changing a lot of names.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're feeling like, racist people or people who own slaves, probably not a good name for an elementary school.
Unless you're in the
So
South, and then they may keep them, they may not.
the uproar here is insane. Virginia thinks it's the South. It's the Diet Coke of the South. Don't at me. That's just what it is. So,
it's so north to be south.
dude, this is a perfect music album. Too north to be south.
No doubt.
All right.
When crimes happen, many times the media or the police will question those that knew the suspect or the family. This case was no different, and neither were the answers. According to friends, the Kosbergs were a close and happy family, and the children would do everything for their parents. Kosberg himself was described as a nice kid. Sure, nice kid. What he did have was a history of mental illness, more on that later, and once lived at a residence for disturbed boys run by the Central City Mission. The supervisor there, Robert Estergaard, said that he got along well with everyone, but kept running away from the home and the mission. I got curious, like Alice in Wonderland, and decided to look up a little more about Central City Mission. Believe it or not, this foundation is still around. The foundation started in 1907 with a small group of neighbors who wanted to start a mission for poor and unemployed men in the inner city of Vancouver. Always for the men.
Let's hear it for the boys.
Yeah, it's like the YMCA and everything was always for the men, and then maybe we'll do something for the women too.
Yeah, we'll turn the M over. We'll make it a W. Yeah, it'll be cheap. Yeah, it's fine.
Just cut it out, flip it over. In 1909, Central City Mission was incorporated, and 2 days later, the board of directors made a deposit on the property at 233 Abbott Street, which is still there today. The cornerstone was laid in 1910, and the building was used by the mission for 83 years. It's now an apartment building because of, capitalism, overpopulation, and, just gotta build it bigger.
Yep, right, of course.
It's like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Why did you build a bypass? Because you gotta build bypasses.
I love it.
In the 1950s and 60s, new programs were started by the foundation. In the early 50s, the mission opened a number of group homes for young men who needed housing while being treated for mental health problems. This is where Thomas Kosberg spent some of his time when he wasn't trying to run away. Which, it's just so sad. Like, being a young person, obviously, things aren't going right for you in your head, and you're just always trying to get away.
And I tell you what, a lot of things, like, dude, so much has changed. Like, I just made a visit to a local area that kind of falls under where I work, and it's for juvenile, like, mental health treatment and like psychotics and depressives and suicide attempts, etc. And like the way that it's set up, like, my soapbox is always like youth mental health, and like I think there should be more things out there for folks that their parents can't do anything, so they need help, right?
Yeah.
And they feel really helpless, but this helps out. But the way that it's organized, it's separated in pods and locked doors, and there's no chance of them leaving. Like, this is not like you could just up and I'm going to go to the bathroom and then just leave. Like, this isn't a thing. So it's changed a lot, probably for the better, but it's a lot different now.
Well, this is definitely the 50s and 60s, so they don't have a lot of those technologies yet.
People still hitchhiking, Woodstock, etc.
Yeah, exactly. I should note that there is no indication that I found of mistreatment or ill will around his time at the Central City Mission, so that seems to be an upside.
Yeah.
In addition, Kosberg was also treated by Dr. Bennett Wong, who saw him for 6 months. According to the doctor, Kosberg's mental disorder dated back to 1961, and his last treatment was about a year prior to the murders. In January 1964, he was admitted to the Crease Clinic, a mental institution part of the Riverview Hospital. He may have been there in 1961 as well. We're not 100% sure. Older case, right?
Yeah.
So Riverview Hospital and the Crease Clinic are fascinating pieces of British Columbia history, for better or for worse. Riverview was a Canadian mental health facility based in Coquitlam, British Columbia. Royal Hospital in Victoria was converted to BC's first facility to house mentally ill patients in 1876. There will be a theme of overcrowding, reduced funds, promised funds, false promises, overcrowding, and shutdowns. You never hear that in politics.
Well, regularly in American politics, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh, in Canada too, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Due to overcrowding, in 1904, the government purchased 1,000 acres in Coquitlam for construction of Riverview Hospital. I'll give you an example of overcrowding. In 1913, a permanent mental hospital was completed. It was opened, treating 300 seriously mentally ill patients. The building was built to hold 480 patients. By the end of the first year, it housed 919.
That's
awful.
It is awful because you know that not only is there lack of space, but there's lack of like employees.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh yeah, for sure.
There's no way. Like I wouldn't even go to a school where the employee, like the teacher student ratio was like that. So
no,
not at all.
There was an acute psychiatric unit opened in 1924 due to overcrowding. A 675 bed female chronic unit opened due to overcrowding.
I just want to say, like in 1924, they considered like some real odd things to be like psychopathic. So
yeah. Like thinking for yourself as a woman,
or reading books. That is one.
Oh,
reading
I haven't
books.
heard that one.
How dare you read a book? Yeah.
By 1956, the hospital reached 4,306 patients. But from the 1960s on, there was a steady decline in beds. Eventually, in 2004, it was 800 beds. But still, it wasn't designed even for that many.
Not really, no.
Once the hospital was closed, it was added to the Canadian Register of Historic Places in 2009. But the land continued on being a location for mental health facilities. So, quote, the construction of the provincially funded $101 million mental health and addiction treatment facility on the Riverview grounds began in 2017 and is planned to open its doors in 2021. It will house 105 patients and provide specialized care for adults with severe and complex mental health and addiction challenges. That's good, although it's not big enough. Unfortunately, when Riverview Hospital closed, a large portion of the patients that left there that just couldn't deal with life's challenges ended up on the downtown east side in Vancouver on Hastings and are unhoused, horrible addiction problems, and yeah, it didn't go well for them, unfortunately.
No. Ugh.
If you look at pictures of Riverview Hospital, your senses are going to be attacked with creepy. It's extremely haunted if you believe in that kind of stuff. In addition, the hospital campus is used for filming all of the time, as the multiple sites and locations provide plenty of opportunities. And that includes like the steam tunnels below and all kinds of shit. Yeah, it's supposed to be really fucking creepy in the steam tunnels.
Yeah.
So some of the films and TV shows that were made there include The Watchmen, Supernatural, The X-Files, whoop whoop, Arrow, Elf, somehow, Smallville, Happy Gilmore again, I don't know how, The Butterfly Effect, and Deadpool 2. That one makes more sense.
A lot of Deadpool 2. Like almost all of it, I think I read.
Yeah, there's a big chunk.
Yeah.
And as much as we could talk about Riverview Hospital, its history, and the nefarious stuff that went on in the early 20th century in a mental health facility, keeping in mind that they were labeled lunatic asylums not long before that, let's get back with the case. And, you know, it might be actually interesting to do a series just on some of these hospitals. Some of them were far worse than others.
Yeah, and like some foreshadowing. Like there's a good chunk of like a couple of cases we're covering in the future that involve asylums and things like that. So it might be nice to eventually do a deep delve in that stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
On December 9th, 1965, according to a statement read during this trial, Kosberg bought a bottle of sleeping pills, 25 pills to be exact. His family was in the living room watching TV alone with his mother's friend, Florence. Kosberg made the family chocolate milkshakes laced with drugs. Lord, if you mess with my chocolate milkshakes, don't even dare. That's definitely JT speaking right there.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, too, because there is another huge case in BC where it was milkshakes, the milkshake murders. So what is it with milkshakes in BC? I don't know.
Was that before or after this one? Because I wonder who got whose idea and who paid who royalties.
Wasn't him.
If you're gonna sample my shit, you better pay me. That's so dark. It's like you take this lovely thing that people like really enjoy and have great childhood memories about, and like like if any of them survived, it's like, do you ever want to drink another milkshake ever again? Good God.
No shit. I think it was 1965. I think I saw.
Oh God, that's like the same year.
Yeah, about the same time.
Holy shit, man!
Yep, right around the same time, same year. Like.
Nestle and milkshakes took a dive.
Yep. The bottle was later found by police, which corroborated the story. While at the same time, they found absolutely no traces of bromide, barbiturates, or alcohol in his family's system. I'm not sure if that's because there wasn't anything, or because they just didn't have the testing capabilities to find exactly what they should have been looking for. Who knows? I'm also not sure as to the half-life of the medication, so it could have just been through the system already.
Yeah, absolutely.
The family friend, Florence, woke up at 11 p.m. and left for her home in a taxi. Kosberg suggested she should stay for the night, but she declined.
Brilliant, Florence. Brilliant.
Good
Can
move.
you imagine the survivor's guilt, though? Oh, my God.
Yeah. Oh, it'd be awful.
Yeah.
And that, my friend, is called dodging a bullet or ducking an axe. Poor taste. I don't know.
Too soon. I don't know.
Kosberg waited for his father to return home. He was a truck driver for Allied Heat and Fuel Company and walked in the door at 1 a.m., December 10th. His family was asleep and he found a milkshake with his name on it. So I don't know if that was literally or what, but I kind of think it might have been. But
yeah, like big old neon signs just pointing like
exactly.
Drink me, like Alice in Wonderland again.
Yeah.
Just like, yeah.
I just hope it didn't say like Daddy's milkshake on it. Too many boys would come to the yard.
Obviously, these are my words. These are the words of a maniac and not a Mike.
Yep. In either case, all jokes aside, he drank it and went to sleep. Around 4 a.m, Kosberg went into the basement and grabbed a double-bitted axe. So, I mean, as a Canadian, it kind of makes sense to have an axe in the basement because, I mean, you're going to go camping in the summer and stuff, right? And, I mean, a lot of the older houses also would be heated by a wood-fired stove.
Well,
so
that answers my questions.
Yeah. So I think that might have been it. I don't know about this home, but a lot of the older homes, it wasn't, natural gas and stuff.
Yeah.
So it would have been an old wood-fired stove.
I just want you guys to know, Mike is explaining this because what I wrote in here was, first, why is this in the basement? And second, why is this in the basement? Because I don't live in Canada.
Yes. But actually, one of my coworkers, he actually lives in a home today that still the heat is from a wood-fired stove.
God bless
for the
him.
whole house.
God bless him.
So, yeah, it's an old house and it hasn't had any upgrades, basically.
Wow. God.
Yeah.
There's like a piece of me that thinks that'd be great, but it's like that idea of like, I would love to live on a farm, and then you live on a farm and you're like, God, this sucks.
Yeah. He has to, chop all the wood, although he has something that, does it less manually than an axe, but
sure.
It's a lot of work.
Oh, yeah. Oh, for sure. I mean, if I had to do it every day, I'd probably buy something too.
Yeah. So he went on to kill his family. He attacked his siblings and then returned to his parents. According to the police, 4 of the 5 initial fatalities died in bed without a struggle. All of the victims were hacked in the head multiple times, causing severe skull and brain injuries. However, according to the pathologist, none of them died instantaneously, which is so much fucking worse.
It's so dark, man. It's so dark. And I want people to know that was a quote. That is not me using hack. I would never probably use the word hack because I think it's hack, but that's how they described it. So I can only imagine how brutal it was.
Absolutely. Yeah, I forgot to mention that was a quote.
No, yeah.
The only member of the family that did not die right away was his 6-month-old brother, Osborne Jr. He chose to attempt smothering him. I'm not sure why. I'm sure there is some pathological, psychological reason for it. Same as using the axe and having them be asleep while he did it. Because definitely that's a bit of a coward thing to do, to make sure they're asleep first. Like, if you were doing it face to face, just taking the axe to them, it's different than making sure they're asleep.
It's different than their heads in pillows, not looking and being asleep. Because it's almost like it's easier to justify killing a living thing if they don't seem like they're living, you know? So that's like a lot of serial killers who get started, they attack from behind, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's very cowardly, to be honest with you. I mean, obviously it's not brave to do it the other way, but this is it's a cowardly thing.
It just definitely shows a different headspace for the murderer.
Yeah. And I mean, he was 16, so, you know.
Yeah. And very, very sick.
Yes.
Thomas Kosberg is a real winner, right? After he murdered his family, he changed his clothes, as one does. Then he took his father's car and ran it right into a power pole. Whoops. Then he stole another car. He then ended up seeing Dr. Wong, the doc who saw him prior to the murders, for 6 months. He phoned Robert Estergaard, the youth director at Central City Mission, to take him to Dr. Wong. Robert said, quote, Kosberg was trembling, having cramps, and kept holding his stomach, but at times would drift off to sleep.
Well, and just to hit on this, it's really crazy how many times we read a story about like murders happening, and then when they're done, the person who did it is just like, there's two options: either they're real amped up, or they're just ready to pass out. So it's like he was harboring something that nobody knew about for so long, let it out, and it's just like, I'm exhausted, right?
Yeah. Fuck.
Yeah.
They got to Dr. Wong's at 7 a.m. on the same day of the murders. He told Dr. Wong that he did something awful. Understatement of the 1960s. And there were a lot of those.
Yeah.
The police were called at 7:45, and he was arrested shortly thereafter. It's kind of amazing it took 45 minutes for them to call the cops.
Yeah, either Dr. Wong knew something about him having episodes, or he talked to Dr. Wong in those 6 months where he had to make sure that was true and it wasn't just a thought, and was having a hard time separating fantasy from reality. Or Dr. Wong was like, let me just get all I can from him right now while he's in this state before the cops come. So
yeah, exactly.
He also might have called him right away and it took him that long. So there's various choose your own adventure. There's different options there.
There are. Officers arrived on the scene. They found Kosberg's mom and dad in their beds. His brother lay on the floor. His other brother was in the crib, seemingly unharmed. One of his sisters was found in the rear bedroom and one in the front bedroom. His sister, Miriam, who was in the same room as another who died, was still alive in her bed. But she had some serious head injuries. She would die 9 days later, which that's even worse.
Yeah, I don't know the worst
of agony.
I hope nobody really told her about what happened, because that would kill me alone.
Yeah,
you know. So
Kosberg arrived at juvenile court and was charged with 5 counts of juvenile delinquency in connection with capital murder. And at that time, Canada still had capital punishment, which has been abolished since. On December 14th, he was declared mentally ill and was committed to Riverview Mental Hospital until his partial or complete recovery, or until further order. So it was one of those things, you're going away until we say otherwise.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like an example of like, are you fit to stand trial? And then, dude, the U.S. does this all the time. If you're not fit to stand trial, they send you to a facility until you are, and they'll find a way to make you fit one way or another. So, yeah.
And that is actually a difference with Canada, because this case will show.
Yeah.
Yeah. And once he was no longer mentally incapable, things changed.
Yep.
And we'll get to that.
Yep.
If there is any question about the insanity defense, in typical cases, the rate the defense is used is 1% of the time, and it works a quarter of that 1%. So it doesn't happen very often, and it rarely works.
Right.
Which is the way it should be.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it should be hard to prove that, or we'd have everybody being like, hey, I'm crazy.
Yeah.
And it's not that simple. And then, we'll talk about it in a second, but there's a difference between the legal definition and like social definition. So.
Oh, yeah. Because you can be mentally ill, but still guilty and, able to understand what you're doing is wrong.
Right.
And then you can be not able.
Right. Yes.
Yeah. The insanity defense consists of two factors, mental illness and the resulting incapacity. The best known and oldest of Canada's insanity tests is the McNaughton test. This is based partially on the defendant's incapacity to appreciate the implications of the act. The offender might have known what they were doing, or they may understand the consequences, but the will of stopping was overpowered. There are two factors here. One, Canadian law presumes sanity, and the defense must disprove this presumption. And two, the end result of the successful insanity defense means the intermediate confinement to a mental institution. His trial in 1967 only lasted a couple of hours. He pled not guilty, but did admit that he had attacked his family with an axe after putting them to sleep with sleeping pills in milkshakes. Quote, two psychiatrists testified that he suffered from a mental disturbance when he committed the murders, preventing him from appreciating the nature and quality of his actions. One of them, Dr. Joseph Thomas, described Kosberg as an automatic person capable of carrying out complex and deliberate plan, but who was incapable of discerning right from wrong. He also believed that Kosberg was suffering from a schizophrenic reaction and that his mental disorder had reached an uncontrollable state on the night of the murders. End quote. Apparently, when Kosberg went to talk to Dr. Wong right after the murders, he thought he was morally justified, which is rough.
Yeah, that's really hard to hear for anybody. It's hard to understand. I think it's interesting, and I appreciate the concept of that a person is capable of carrying out a deliberate plan that is thought out, but then also they don't discern right from wrong. A lot of people think, well, if they could carry out this big plan, they obviously aren't crazy or mentally ill in any way, shape, or form because they were thinking that hard. But that's not how it works.
So Kosberg was found not guilty by reason of insanity on February 16th, 1967. Just over a year later, in September 1977, Kosberg was declared to pose no danger to society and was ordered to be released on the conditions that he lived in an approved place in British Columbia and has to report to an official once a week.
I've seen plot arcs that take longer. Good grief. Yeah.
And I mean, like you were saying there in the States, they find a way to find you sane so that you go to jail.
Yep.
Yeah. He was found sane at that point and released.
Yeah. And I mean, yeah.
At least after his release, he was married and then worked for Vancouver Children's Hospital for 30 years.
Yeah.
So obviously he had a horrible break when he was a child, and for the rest of his life, he seems to have been a important part of Vancouver, right? Like working at Children's Hospital.
Yeah.
Is a very important job.
And like I figured that out in his obituary, but it didn't say specifically what he did at a children's hospital. Yeah. But I would imagine that if he was anywhere near the idea of like mental health, he would have something to talk, like he could really help. And it sounds like he really was kind of like a contributing member to society after all this happened. So he didn't seem to dwell on it. He didn't seem to he probably regretted it, but he didn't seem to hold on to it. He seemed to be able to push forward, which I think is a really good example of something that could happen when treated correctly.
Yeah. I mean, that's where, the prison system and the mental health system and all of that have to work towards trying to make things better, because if people are rehabilitated, they are probably fine to be released out into society. As long as they're rehabilitated. And that's the big if, right?
That is,
and this guy obviously was, because he lived the next 30 years or whatever without causing trouble, working.
I just can you imagine what his pickup line was for the woman he married? I don't, what do you say? Because obviously this was probably a well-documented case.
Yeah. So, and I mean, I did some work at Vancouver Children's Hospital, which is attached to it's Women and Children's Hospital now, and you have to have a criminal record check now to work there. So the fact that he worked there for 30 years, obviously they weren't worried about him anymore.
Right. Right. Yeah. Absolutely. And like people don't F with children. It's not like a joke. Like if they were even slightly worried, you'd be gone. So
yeah, well, gotcha. You would never got the job,
well,
right?
for sure. For sure.
So yeah, Thomas Gordon Kosberg died on January 1st, 2016, and as far as we can tell, never reoffended.
Yep. And I think it's cool to talk about. Like you can write a case, but like once you talk about it, you're like, holy crap, it like kind of worked.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I haven't heard anything about what's his name again, the guy on the Greyhound in Canada that beheaded a guy and has also been released.
That's unique. God, I don't know how you could find enough space on a Greyhound to swing anything enough to successfully do that.
It was just a knife, unfortunately.
Oh my!
We covered this a long time ago.
Did you?
Vince Lee, he's changed his name since then.
Yeah.
Killed Tim McLean and he beheaded him and ate part of his body and stuff.
Oh man!
And was deemed not criminally responsible. Ended up in a mental health facility and has now been released. And it's been over 10 years now, and there's been no word of him doing anything wrong since.
I mean, I don't like to say that a system's perfect. No system's perfect.
No, God.
But can I tell you that those two cases alone are like two more cases than I typically hear about here on the other side of the border. So, it's, at least at some point, things are working at some level.
Well, but I mean, just like the American prison system having a horrible, disproportionate amount of Black and Mexican people in prison, Canada has a massively disproportionate amount of Indigenous people in prison.
That is,
so,
yeah.
I mean, it's a system is pretty broken here too. It's just broken in different ways.
Yeah. Ugh. That's man. What a case. What a case. All right.
Well, let's get ready for the next case then.
So this case is quite literally one of the biggest. This guy is one of the biggest pain in the asses that I have ever covered in my life. Like just when you think couldn't get worse, he just gets worse. So, beautifully segueing into my beer choice. I actually chose a beer from Stone Brewing
Company, I think, isn't it?
Thank you. You are correct.
From California.
Oh, but I will say this. They are based in California. They have a brewer here in Richmond.
Oh, that's right. They do too, don't they?
So this is local too.
I met their original head brewer, Mitch Steele.
Yeah. At
his new brewery, New Realm Brewing in Atlanta, Georgia.
You met him in Atlanta?
Yeah, that's where he lives now. I was in Atlanta and I literally sat down at the bar at his brewery and I'm having a beer. And then he sits down with another guy, and I'm like, wait a minute. I think I recognize that face. I started Googling. I'm like, as soon as they finished their meeting, I'm like, hey, Mitch. And I had a quick little conversation, handed over a beer from here.
Yeah.
And then, fanboyed out a little bit, and then he went away.
Dude, that's awesome. That is so cool, But yeah, so this... I think there's no better brew really to represent this case than something called Vengeful Spirit IPA, because he really was just a pain in the ass.
Oh, and you know what? Another beer that they make is Arrogant Bastard.
They do indeed. He was also that. I actually had a couple of choices, and this is the one I went with. But it's an IPA. It's a medley of tropical fruit juices, including pineapple, orange, and citrus. And there's a hint of malt for the fruitiness, basically to support it, that comes from the fresh fruit and hops. It actually uses 4 different types of hops. And the ingredients, again, are like pineapple and mandarin orange. It's a hazy gold. It's got fine bubbles and a white head.
It looks nice.
It is, yeah. That's a perfect description of it. So, there's no video, but that's pretty much it. And there's such a fruity aroma. Like I could literally just sit here with my nose in the glass and just smell it over and over again. It's amazing, and it's just
It's a good sign.
it is refreshing. This is something that I would drink like like in a hot summer, just outside. It's more than PBR now, guys. Um,
Nice.
so that's Vengeful Spirit IPA. We are always of the belief that the majority of Canada is nice, happy, and whatever other optimistic and happy quote you can think of. Correction, I am always of that belief. Let me fix that.
Yes, there's a lot of politeness.
There is a
in
lot
Canada.
of polite. You have described
Politeness.
polite is different than nice. There's
Yes,
two
it
different
is.
things. I have personally, and Mike, you've heard this is not a surprise. I have always been under the impression that all the evil in Canada is placed within Canadian geese and hockey teams in order for the rest of the team to be generally kind. I'm sure.
And, hey, murder chickens, cobra chickens, they're not nice. So yeah.
No, they are not. They are bitter, sadistic animals.
Fucks.
And so now that I've totally turned off all of your listeners in Canada,
No, not at all.
let me just say this case absolutely gutted me for so many reasons. One, exploded my thoughts of Canada, and two, it's just horrifying. And it's one of those cases that goes on and on and on, and just when you think it's over, there's something else, and it's quite literally one of the biggest wormholes that I've ever gone down. And the wormhole is full of shit, muck, mire, and violence for sure. And thank you for that, by the way. It's like an ogre. It has layers. It's so bad. Okay, so this is the case of the Beast of BC, British Columbia, the rent-a-car killer, Clifford Robert Olson Jr., another junior.
Yeah. And I mean, hey, he was one of the worst ones until we had Willie Picton.
Oh,
and then
yeah.
Willie Picton, he was only charged for so many, but the amount of deaths that he's involved with, he might be worse, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, Cliff, I'm going to call him Cliff. He scored a 38 out of 40 on the psychopathy checklist. So let's see who else is on the scoreboard of this checklist. I'm so glad you're interested. Canadian serial killer Paul Bernardo scored a 35 out of 40. Ted Bundy scored a 39 out of 40. Peter London scored a 39 out of 40. And Eileen Warnos from Florida scored a 32 out of 40. So he is up there.
He's right up there. Holy shit, yeah.
So, he's in good company, right?
Yeah. Good, quote unquote.
Yeah, right.
Some of the worst fucking company.
Yeah. And I just kind of want to start this off with a warning. If sex crimes involving children, and just general kind of terrible things are just triggers for you, I mean, I don't want to, like, on my first episode say, go ahead and stop listening, but go ahead and stop listening, because I really don't want to put you in that position. And I'm not going to get extremely graphic, but it still involves kids. And, the imagination
it's still going to be awful.
It's going to be awful. So this will give you a really great idea of how awful. We're going to kick off the case with a quick quote from Clifford Olson himself. And he says, "If I gave a shit about the parents, I wouldn't have killed the kid." So that, yeah. So you heard me right. I didn't stutter. It didn't speak French, German, or whatever other language. Like, this man's wretched. He's horrible. So that being said, let's hop in, right? Because that's what we do. You sometimes hear, mostly in movies, that someone was born evil. I don't really subscribe to that, except kind of in this case. Born January 1st, 1940, Olson was considered a bad seed from the get-go. He was one of 4 kids, the oldest, and was the son of Clifford and Leona. He grew up in a small house near the Pacific National Exhibition grounds. His dad, for a while, was a milkman, and he was one of the last that delivered milk in a horse-drawn cart. Eventually, his dad would work construction and become an apartment building manager, and his mom was a housekeeper. After World War II, the family moved to the suburb of Richmond. Not mine.
No.
I love how we both have one, though. This is going to be great and confusing.
I was there today.
Is that the picture you sent me?
No.
Oh, okay. So I know that you're looking for kind of some information about his childhood that would indicate that he would become something terrible. Was there abuse? No. Was there hate-filled family drama? No. Was there abandonment? No. But what was there? So when asked about his son early in life, his dad said, quote, "He was always getting into fights and getting beaten up. And one day he said, 'Dad, I'm going to learn to be a boxer.' And as soon as he did, he began making the rounds of the boys who had beaten him up and started evening the score. Maybe that's just his trouble, the chip on his shoulder. So he didn't learn fighting to defend himself. He learned fighting to get back. So that's a big ass chip, The only place that I could see things going wrong is that his mother would always make excuses for his behavior. I think we all have, I've got 2 kids. I've done that. I don't have the information to truly commit to that idea. There's nothing there for that. But it seems like whenever he would get in trouble, when younger, his mom would kind of wave it away and did the entire boys will be boys deal.
Yeah.
Well, serial killers will be serial killers as well, but you don't see me saying that. So the conviction stats on Clifford Olson are absolutely staggering. It's truly a miracle and also a mistake that he was allowed to be out at any point during the time of his murders. He was jailed for the first time at the age of 17, and that occurred on July 19th, 1957. Over the next 24 years, he was convicted nearly 100 times. For what? Well, have you ever heard the song, It's the End of the World and We Know It?
Yes, I have.
Strap in. Obstructing justice, possession of stolen property, possession of firearms, forgery, false pretenses, fraud, parole violation, impaired driving, theft, break and enter and theft, armed robbery, escape from lawful custody, rape, buggery, gross indecency, first-degree murder.
Just a couple things.
Just a few. I like to call him
seriously piece of shit.
Yeah, I like to call him a regular old Skittles of a criminal, where like he just had a little bit of everything.
Yeah, no doubt.
Really go big or go home. In addition to all of these charges, he also escaped jail 7 different times. And kind of at a certain point, I would chain him to the floor and tell him to stay. But that's just me, So.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, we've got some pretty friggin' secure jails. Maybe put him in one of those.
Maybe, probably, yeah. My thought is that they were kind of like probably like local, like little jails,
Yeah, probably.
There's one thing that can be said of him, and when he committed to something, boy, did he commit. In 1965, a search was on for Clifford Olson post-escape, and he was serving time for break and enter theft. And he faked an illness, and while on the way to the hospital, he escaped 3 guards. There were a ton of police, dozens. Some reports say. At one point, Olson slipped a human net of investigators literally by seconds. They missed him by like that much.
Jeez.
I know. After a week on the loose, he was nabbed by a police canine by the name of Tiger. Rawr, rawr, I say, Tiger, rawr. For those of you playing the home game, my goal in every episode is to make Mike have to dribble out some beer.
Not there yet.
No. The chief border inspector said, quote, he must have lay there in the leaves for 3 hours with 50 people crisscrossing right through that area.
That's insane.
That's ridiculous. At some point, even I would be like, all right, guys, listen, you win.
Yeah, I would be shitting bricks as a person who didn't commit a crime.
Exactly. But here's the thing. The canine went straight to him. At a certain point, just put the canine out first, right? I'm not sure if this kind of speaks more about the dog, which we know has a keen sense of smell and can apparently smell ass hats.
Yes, he can.
Or if it says more about the lack of competence in the dozen of investigators. I'm not going to say that because it sounds like the net was solid. It sounds like it just missed them,
Yeah. I mean, he was good at hiding.
Right.
Hide and seek champion.
Oh my God, that's the new Brew Crime shirt. It's got an outline picture of him and it says hide and seek champion. End of story. Write that one down. That's a barn burner right there. Oh my God. Yikes. All right. So being caught by a dog was a theme for Olson, as it was the second time that happened. I don't know if he doesn't know to hop into a body of water to break the scent and mess the dogs up. Apparently he's pretty pungent, at the bottom. A year earlier, he got caught in a bunch of Richmond blackberry bushes, and a police canine named Rinty caught him. And it sounds like a country song. So I'm going to sing one right now. Take your blackberry bushes and stick 'em. The lawn, the canines will catch 'em. If you see me running through, the police will run too. I won't make it too far from the Steel Zoo. And that's what you get from me on this show now.
Man, that's good, actually.
So here's where we kick it up a notch. I mean, if you've ever seen Emerald on the Food Network, he says "bam" and a pinch of salt and are really original and unique. But, in this case, Olson opened up the bottle of salt and just literally just dumped it, all of it, like a freshman male trying to pick up someone way out of his league. He just poured it on, right? So, a few months out of his most recent prison release in January of 1980, Olson seduced a woman named Joan Hale. She was recently divorced and had suffered through an extremely violent marriage. So, Olson was kind of a step sideways, I guess. He certainly wasn't up. It wasn't a step up. They had a son in April of 1981 and married a month later. The entire thing was during Olson's killing spree. And I'd like to call this a marriage of convenience for him. We kind of talk about that all the time with serial killers. But, that being said, when the story twists and turns, you might have a hard time understanding how this was a simple case of convenience. I can say that Olson was just a horrible person who lived off the divorce settlement his wife had, and he abused Joan as well. So it's just terrible.
Mm-hmm.
There are so many different avenues that we could take this story. There are so many different ways it could go, and you'd think it'd be a straightforward case for the most part. But to add fuel to the fire, Olson was actually also an informant for a bit, or quite, known as a rat, right?
Yeah.
In prison. So this is one of the reasons folks thought he was able to elude or escape the police for as long as he did, because the cops saw him as a resource, not a suspect. Even after detectives identified him as the prime suspect, they kind of held off. And the public criticized police because he was able to kill again and again, even after detectives identified him as that prime suspect. There were two specific instances to let us know that he was an informant. So in 1976 at Prince Albert Penitentiary, which, let me say, quite the name, quite the penitentiary name. Nothing better than
it's also a place in Canada too.
Is there a specific piercing that everybody gets in order to live there? It's just on the HOA. It's just like you.
If only, right?
That is not in the script. So at Prince Albert Penitentiary, he was actually stabbed 7 times by a group of prisoners because he basically betrayed them and identified them all to the authorities. So
yeah.
That's pretty clear. Then he provided enough information to ensure the conviction of a fellow inmate who raped, mutilated, and strangled a 9-year-old girl, which ends up being pretty ironic post 1981, because he then, I believe I read, testified against the person who, in order to prosecute him. We'll see why that's ironic later. So you can see why the cops were literally all about Olson and his ability to play the informant. He has a long rap sheet. He knows how things work in prison. It's easy for him to do.
Yeah, no shit.
So let's go back to the timeline, explain how he did what he did, and then talk about the victims and how they died. And I don't usually talk too much about that, but Olson was a son of a bitch, and it kind of gives us a clearer look into his psyche. So in terms of his method, he was usually all hopped up on Mountain Dew. No, that's not true at all. It's usually alcohol and pills. I'm all hopped up on Mountain Dew. Okay. So he would meet his victims in video parlors, which I assume that means video arcades. I'm guessing it's video games. Is that what a video parlor is? I guess
I don't know what a video parlor would be. Yeah.
I mean, it could be a theater, but who's talking in a theater? I suppose. I mean, I guess an asshole. So that would be him. I mean, he was looking for places the kids hung out. Because that's not creepy, right?
Yeah, or it could have been somewhere like pre-video games where kids hung out. I don't know. Yeah.
So he actually advertised for them also. So he didn't just like go after them. He advertised for them on a bulletin board at the People's Full Gospel Church, as opposed to the half full or poorly attended gospel church, I guess.
Yes, yeah.
So this was a Baptist congregation where he and Joan worshipped, which to me is like what I wrote here is, quote, Jesus, what an absolute hypocritical prick.
Oh yeah, no shit. Yeah. I mean,
yeah, I followed it up with, I'm surprised it wasn't a Catholic church. Oh, oh man.
But
don't worry, the cradle Catholic in me will feel guilty later, but not now. Anyways, and anywho, he would hand out a business card, basically like this 3D business card, which I wrote, aren't they all? Because it's like really hard to hand a 2D business card out. But he would explain that he was a construction worker. He would offer these random kids a job at a fake site. And while they were on their way in the car, he would offer them something to celebrate, because, that's what you do when you take somebody underage to a job opportunity at a construction site, right?
Of course, yeah.
You offer them a drink. Basically, he used what's known as a Mickey Fin, or a Mickey, which is a drink spiked with chloral hydrate, which is a drug that'll knock you the fuck out. Like,
Yeah, no shit.
you're done. And as I'm reading this, I'm actually thinking, holy shit, construction, he'd offer people jobs is a lot like Gacy, John Wayne Gacy, who did almost the same thing, you know? But I actually think Clifford's kind of a bigger asshole. Relatively.
Well, fuck, did he ever get away with a lot of shit, right?
Yeah. And I said, because he's a fucking asshat, he then overpowered the kid. Not hard to do, Cliff, when the kid's knocked out.
And he's a kid too, and you're a full grown ass adult.
Right. Yeah. And then he performed experiments on the children. So then Olson would place their bodies in bags in bogs and cranberry fields of the Fraser River Delta, as well as abandoned quarries and canyons of the coastal mountains. The entire time he was able to avoid police of any kind because he was so damn familiar with what their procedures were and how they operated.
Yeah.
You know?
And I mean, if he's hiding them along the Fraser River, that's a long stretch he could be hiding them on, because the Fraser River is a very long river.
Oh, really? See, I love this because you can confirm. You can confirm.
Let me just see here. The Fraser River runs from, I think it's Jasper National Park on the border of BC, Alberta, all the way to Vancouver.
Oh, wow.
Fraser River's length is 1,375 kilometers, 854 miles.
Yeah, I ain't running that. That's massive. I'm guessing that there's some kind of a road, like a river road that goes the length or something. I don't know.
No,
so he just found a spot.
Obviously, he was probably doing this in a certain area.
Yeah.
But to say it was along the Fraser River could be such a huge area.
God, that's insane. So this guy, an absolute monster. So let's kind of take a look at the victims, their ages, how they died. I should note that I got this information from a combination of places. One was a profile on Clifford that I actually believe he wrote himself because he was that egotistical. But
no shit.
But at the same time, the profile included information he did provide to the police, details I'll tell about later regarding his victims, how they died, which they matched up with facts that they had as well. So while it came from Olson, it seemingly was backed up with evidence. So I'm gonna kind of go through that a little bit. So Christine Weller was 12. This already sucks.
Yeah.
She was found murdered in Richmond on December 25th, 1980. She was actually stabbed to death on November 19th of that year. She was driven to an area of Richmond where she was murdered by multiple stab wounds to the chest and abdomen. She had 10 total and also had 2 superficial slashes in the neck. She also had a double perforation of the right ventricle of the heart and 4 penetrating wounds to her liver. I actually looked up the force it would take, also known as the anger reflected in the stab, and it's actually really hard to calculate, apparently. I didn't know this. I'm probably on some government watch list now, but I guess it depends on the knife size, sharpness, point, too much to really kind of assume. So it's just a lot of assumption if I tried to guess, but the amount of pressure is insane. Colleen Dagnalt. God, I hope I'm not ruining these names. Usually I can guess pretty okay. She was 13. She was murdered on April 15th, 1981 in South Surrey. She was picked up and driven to a remote area of South Surrey where she was attacked and murdered by repeated hammer blows to the head.
So again, not too far from Richmond.
Okay.
Right across the river from Richmond.
So we're kind of doing that old triangle kind of thing. He's kind of keeping it within.
This is all within Metro Vancouver and the Fraser Valley, which is all kind of around the Fraser River there. Just down here in the southwest corner of the province.
God. Darren Johnsrud was 16. He was murdered on April 21st, 1981 in Desroches. Is it Desroches?
Yeah, Desroches. Yeah.
Okay. He was picked up in New Westminster and driven to Desroches, where he was murdered by repeated hammer blows to his head. Sandra Lynn Wolfsteiner was 16, murdered May 19th, 1981 in Chilliwack Lake area. She was picked up at a bus stop in Surrey, driven to a remote area on Chilliwack Lake Road. She was murdered by, again, repeated hammer blows to the head.
And that is really remote. Once you get to Chilliwack, you drive through downtown around to the Chilliwack Lake Road, which goes towards Chilliwack Provincial Park. But once you're at the intersection for the Chilliwack Lake Road, it's like an hour drive to the provincial park at the far end. Like, it's really remote.
Yeah. Unless you have a reason to be out there, there's no reason.
Which is, it's a great place to hike and like river rafting and out at the lake boating and stuff. But yeah,
I like
it's
that.
the middle of nowhere, even though it's right beside a city. And also, there is nothing at the end of that road except for the provincial park, really. So it's not like you're going somewhere else. The end of the road is the park.
So you'd think it's that time, it'd be a little questionable. But then again, who's driving it at that time? So
Yeah, well, no, it would be people hiking, biking. There is some rural communities up there, but not much. So,
good night.
yeah.
He knew what was going on.
Oh God, yeah.
Ada Anita Court was 13. She was murdered on June 21st, 1981 at Weaver Lake Road. She was picked up while walking on North Road and was driven to a remote spot near Weaver Lake. She was murdered again, repeated hammer blows. Simon Patrick Partington was 9. Murdered on July 2nd, 1981 on River Road, Nelson Avenue in Richmond. He was picked up 2 blocks from his home in Surrey and given a ride. And during that ride, he was taken to a remote location, given a couple bottles of beer, as one does with a 9-year-old.
Yeah.
But then he was strangled.
And he's not going to work.
No. And he was killed by strangulation. July Cosma was 14, murdered on July 9th, 1981, near Weaver Lake. She was picked up in New Westminster and driven to a remote area near the lake where she was murdered by multiple stab wounds. Raymond Lawrence King Jr., 15, murdered on July 23rd, 1981, near Weaver Lake. He was picked up at a bus depot after leaving a manpower office and was driven to a remote area near the lake. He was thrown down an embankment and murdered while unconscious with multiple rock blows to the head.
I've never heard of Weaver Lake, but I just looked it up. And Weaver Lake is on the west side of Harrison Lake, which is a very large lake. And it's a tiny little lake on the west side. So, again, it's, you're getting a little more rural, but not far from a town.
Okay. So he's taking a trip.
Yep.
Probably to extend the enjoyment of what he's getting out of it.
I mean, the crazy part is he really isn't that far from the First Nations Reserve, but it's still pretty rural.
I didn't see anything that specified whether First Nation or not, like indigenous.
No, it would be outside the reserve there, but yeah.
Yeah. The child really was Sigrun Charlotte Elizabeth Arndt, 18, murdered on July 24th, 1981 at a remote area north of River Road in Richmond. She was picked up, driven to that area where she was murdered by repeated hammer blows to the head and then thrown into a ditch with water to be buried.
Jeez.
Yeah. Terry Lynn Carson, 15, murdered July 27th, 1981. You notice these are all in 1981, right?
Yeah.
In a remote area near Chilliwack, Carson was picked up at a bus stop, driven to that area, murdered by strangulation. Louise Simone Marie Evelyn Chartrand, which is a hell of a name, 17, murdered on July 30th, 1981, near Whistler, British Columbia. She was picked up walking to work and driven to where she was murdered by repeated hammer blows.
That's interesting, too. He's, instead of going to the Fraser Valley, where a lot of his murders have been, that's heading up the Sea to Sky Highway, like an hour from Vancouver in the opposite direction. So that's interesting.
I wonder if it had something to do with how he knew that police would search or
Could
make
be,
the assumption you're widening the net, therefore reducing the chance that you're caught. And he probably didn't consciously know that, but
no, yeah, that's interesting though, because everything has been kind of pick him up Metro Vancouver and either kill him there or move him to the Fraser Valley, and this person go the complete opposite way.
I wonder if he felt like maybe somebody was onto him and he decided to throw off the trail.
I don't know. Yeah, that's odd.
I pride myself on not knowing what he was thinking.
Same here.
Thankfully, we're done with that list. There was a little more. Many of the times he would actually experiment on the children. At one point, he drove a 3-inch spike into one child's head, and he injected another with an air embolism.
Oh, Jesus.
He actually talked about them as if they were science experiments. He wanted to be called, BTK wanted BTK, right? He wanted to be called the Silver Hammer Man after the Beatles song Maxwell's Silver Hammer. I don't know how familiar you are with that song, but I picked out a couple of lyrics that go, bang, bang, Maxwell's silver hammer came down upon his head. Clang, clang, Maxwell's silver hammer made sure that she was dead. Whoa, Silver Hammer Man. So I don't know if it was him first and then he realized the song related, or if he did this relating to the song. It's just another person blaming the Beatles.
That I've heard a lot of Beatles music. I've never heard that song.
I mean, it's a good song. I mean, it's in kind of the weird phase of the Beatles, but I liked it. I don't exactly entirely like it now, but it is what it is. So, in other words, he was a disgusting, terrible, horrible, no good dude. And I think we proved that.
Fuck yeah.
So we've talked about the idiot. We've talked a little bit about the victims, and we've even talked about the specific crimes. So the story's over, right? No. I think the Beach Boys said it best when they said, "Wouldn't it be nice?" So when the investigation was at its height, there were over 200 officers on this case. And 200 officers is absolutely ungodly. I mean, the amount of manpower that went into this is crazy. That being said, there was a ton of pressure to find the victims and the person responsible. And that's par for the course. But when you have a bunch of young children and adolescents missing within the time span, I mean, the heat was turned up. I think that's what the kids say. Turned up with a T. I don't know. I've run out of being able to connect with the TikTokers and the Snapchatters.
I'm almost 40. I have no fucking clue.
Get off my lawn. That's what it means.
Exactly. Got my cane.
Right. There were so many problems with this. I'm calling it an in-shitstigation. That's what I'm calling it.
That sounds about right.
Yeah. There were so many departments involved, and this was before the time of computers and interconnection between departments and their investigations. And there were very little policies regarding multi-jurisdictional crimes. And, what a time to be alive. Mid-August 1981, Clifford Robert Olson Jr. was arrested. He was a beefy fella. He was 5'7", weighed maybe 160 pounds. Not exactly the depiction, though, of a beast, right?
No.
As usually is the case. Despite his arrest and despite the murders and crimes committed, the police had very little against him. And there was very little evidence. They only had 4 bodies to attribute to him, possibly. So they have them. They don't have much. They need a damn miracle.
Yeah.
So during their interrogation of Olson, he straight up offered to lead the police to the remains of the children that hadn't been found. And he also volunteered to return some of the jewelry and clothing that he kept as souvenirs. And it's not a gesture of goodwill. I think that was literally him saying, if I can't have it, nobody else can have it. So I guess you're going to have it back. As most interrogations are, this one was taped. Olson had the gall to say to them, quote, "I'll give you 11 bodies for $100,000.
What?
Yeah. So the RMCP Corporal Fred Maile, it's Maile. I'm guessing it's kind of...
I would have to guess, yeah.
He repeated the offer as if there's literally no way that this could be happening. Like, is he really offering this? And he said, yeah. He said he would do that. And not only that, but he would give statements for each of the bodies, and he would provide the evidence, and he would provide the answers only the killer would know. Now, what's the main thing that we're taught about government that they typically don't do, other than provide basic necessities for every person in their country, no matter who they are? Not exactly a thing the government does. But we don't...
A little more in Canada than in the States, but yeah.
Yeah. We don't negotiate with terrorists, right? That's kind of a thing. And you would think that this guy would walk out to pretend to discuss it and come back with a nope, like the easiest nope of your life. Like, it's a hard
thing,
nope,
yeah.
Right. But here's the problem, right? They had literally nothing to keep him, let alone convict him. And he was going to go free. And on top of that, you have the country screaming that they need to do something yesterday. So the detective said, well, just a minute. We'd have to work something out. This is a quote. "I wouldn't just pay you $100,000. You could rip us off." Also, any car dealer.
What the fuck? That is the most fucked up statement ever.
He said, also, "I'd have to have something to tell her, show my bosses that, in fact, you are credible." And Olson said, "Okay, I'll give you a freebie." Keep in mind, we're talking about a child's body, right?
Yeah.
"I'll give you a freebie. I will give you 1 body and a statement. You have the $100,000 in cash. When we are finished at the scene, I will phone, or you will phone your man, who will hand the money over to Joan," who was his wife at the time.
Yeah.
"Then you can talk to your man, and I will talk to Joan to make sure that she has the money. Then we'll go on to the rest." And detective responded, "What if your lawyer doesn't go along with it?" Can I tell you that if this kind of thing happened today, so many fucking people would lose their jobs.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So the detective asked, "What if your lawyer doesn't go along with it?" And Olson said, "Like I told you before, he works for me." Then, as if out of some fever dream LSD Twilight Zone-esque episode, Olson wrote out the deal. Olson himself wrote out the deal, not a lawyer, not risk management. Olson. And here it is. This is what he wrote. This is an undertaking of an agreement between the RCMP and Clifford Robert Olson. The following will be paid by the RCMP to Mrs. Joan Olson for the following information: $10,000 cash for each body of missing persons up to 7 bodies, $30,000 for information of 4 bodies which have already been recovered which relate to the above 7 other missing persons. The agreement should be as undertaken, shall be binding in law, as to not disclose this information in this agreement to the Canadian press. The following missing persons are covered in this agreement. And he lists out the folks that I've discussed before. And then he lists that out, and he says, and one unidentified female, Sigrun Arndt, a German student tourist police weren't aware was missing. $10,000 will be paid to Mrs. Olson up to a total of the recovery of 7 bodies.
Jesus.
It's almost like he played this out in his head so many times up to the interrogation that he just like wrote it out by memory. And after the interrogation, as if that wasn't bad enough, he called his wife and he said, quote, "Honey, you're going to be rich." I can't right now.
It's always amazing, these scumbags that have wives and they seem to actually care about them, yet they're like complete monsters.
Yeah. So obviously there are so many things wrong with this. The obvious is the payment for bodies. It's basically paying him to put himself behind bars, but most blatantly paying him for each kill he had completed, which really sounds like a Hitman video game. I mean, for real.
It does.
But he not only drafted up the agreement, he also just rambled off his victims and included something specific that showcases his ego about all this in terms of identifying that the police didn't know one of the victims was missing. Like, ha, 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 I know this, you don't. And Olson was treated like a damn celebrity. Like, he walked around the offices smoking cigars. He had a bunch of lawyers with him. His wife had no idea that he actually did it. You know, she believes in his innocence. But how did he tell her? He literally he saw her and he said, "What can I say, honey? I did it. It was the booze and the pills." Hard stop. Like, she literally wailed when she found out. So,
wow.
He had officially received money for his murders. He traveled with police to recover the remains. And I'm going to read word for word what this looked like, courtesy of an article that I found. Here we go. Quote, "If the deal-making scene had been surreal, the grisly caravan to recover the remains was something from the Twilight Zone. Olson traveled in a car with 4 detectives, followed by a dog car. Behind, there were usually 3 or 4 other vehicles carrying forensic specialists to handle the crime scenes. Corporal Mail, holding a large tape recorder, sat in the back seat with Olson, who held a microphone. The killer wore a regulation RCMP hat as a disguise and dictated as they went, describing the locale and circumstances of each murder with the panache of a sports announcer. The hourly radio broadcast about the search for more bodies provided a ghastly play-by-play. Olson liked the forest-cloaked hills around Weaver Lake and the peaty bottomland north of the River Road for disposing of his victims. He pantomimed a reenactment of each murder, and then police would call McNenny and release the required amount of money. The lawyer deposited it first in the Bank of Montreal, at Homer and Hastings in downtown Vancouver, but later transferred it offshore to protect it from police seizure." So,
Jesus.
Finally,
it was even planned.
Yeah.
Like, holy shit.
Get ready for this. In between recovering his victims, Olson and the police dined at local steakhouses, where the murderer wolfed down thick sirloins and baked potatoes. I can't. I quite literally cannot.
I have to think he's going to like the Keg Steakhouse or something.
I join the ranks of women in Ugg boots holding their fancy lattes everywhere when I say I just can't. Like,
yeah, no doubt. Like, that is fucking ridiculous.
The only time during any of this where he showed any sign of remorse was when he was charged with all 11 murders. And honestly, it wasn't for the victims or the victims' families. He was playing a game the whole time, and now it was game over, and that was sad to him. And as you can imagine, when news broke of the deal that was made with Olson, the public went crazy.
Yes.
That's at least what I garnered from the stories that I read. And, you know, I don't know if you remember anything regarding this or you've been told about it. Was that?
No, not really.
Okay.
Like, I've listened to like the Dark Poutine episode and stuff,
Sure.
but I'm pretty young.
Yeah. Well,
for
yeah.
This. Like,
it
was 81. You said most of the murders.
Yeah.
And I was born in 82.
Okay.
So
Well,
I was a little young for this.
I didn't know if if it was something that was told around a campfire. Or
My family didn't talk much about crime, so no.
That's fair.
But
mine didn't either. I don't know why I expected it.
Yeah, no. No, a lot of people know a lot about this case, though, right? I mean, I do know a bunch now, but I didn't know about it until, years and years later.
Right. And I mean, that's overall the feeling I'm getting is just that they they were so infuriated, which is the correct response. Even Olson's lawyer said, quote, "I think this was politically insane and I do not approve of it. We all know police pay informants, but I don't think they should pay a culprit." Even his lawyer was like, "Fuck that, I'm out."
Yeah, no shit.
And Williams, the man who approved the deal, said, "I consider this case unique. I do not expect it to occur again. The decision was not an easy one for me or the RCMP to make. It is the practice for monies to be extended in a variety of ways to obtain information, to protect witnesses, sometimes to protect others who may be associated with crimes. The matter is an extension of that principle, one that I don't expect to see repeated. The crimes were so horrible, they should not be revealed. It adds nothing to dwell on details of that kind." Political talk for, I'm not going to talk about this. I'm going to extend a law or a practice to meet my needs.
Yeah.
But of course, once he was locked up, it was over, right? No, not at all.
No, never is.
Olson continued to plague the community, police, and the system. He claimed to have murdered as many as 30 others, but he couldn't substantiate it. He's probably just looking for attention. If you weren't pissed off enough, he sent greeting cards to the parents of the children detailing his brutality.
Fuck me. Like, how do you let that go?
All
the mail's being looked at, isn't it?
I don't know what was happening in 81, man. I don't know. And he also sent pornographic letters to Parliament. He literally never stopped. He just kept doing it. The pornographic letters to Parliament is kind of funny.
It's kind of funny, yeah.
The other one, not.
No, the other ones are awful.
Yeah.
Like, that's so beyond awful.
It's bad. So there was a guy who spent a lot of time with Olson interviewing him while he was in prison. Stanley Semrau, I want to say his last name is. But he said, quote, "He can kill, and it's not out of anger or bitterness, but in a lighthearted way as a sport. He doesn't even grasp the enormity or the horror of what he's done. He is a personality which is devoted to exploiting and harming other people in his own interests." Well said.
Yeah, yeah.
Olson was classified as an antisocial, narcissistic, psychopathic, master manipulator who boasted about his murders, and he displayed homo and heterosexual pedophilia, sexual necrophilia, and sexual sadism. Which, his conditions is almost as long as his rap sheet.
Yeah, no shit. Yeah, he is such an awful human.
Right. And I think Olson eventually discussed that he sexually assaulted 30 to 40 children, ages 5 to 10, and up to 100 young people, ages 16 to 18. If that's right, my brain, I can't wrap my head around.
Yeah, that's so awful, yeah.
Now, from the age of 17, keep in mind all these crimes happened very quickly, because from the age of 17, Olson was free only 1,500 days total.
Jesus Christ. What?
I done did the math, baby. Yeah. So Olson was intelligent, but he was a nobody until he became a somebody, and he reveled in it. And
shit.
If there is a good example of how British Columbia felt about him, one of the victim's parents was asked about Olson, and all they said was, quote, "Just let me pull the switch." And I have a feeling that most of British Columbia would have lined up for that ticket, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Lucky for us and for all of Canada, Clifford Robert Olson Jr. is dead. He was 71 when he died, and he died of cancer. But here are a fun final batch of facts about Olson in the case. After he found jail God, because everybody finds God in jail, literally everybody.
Jail God?
Yeah, I just imagine it's just God in an orange jumpsuit.
Mm-hmm.
So, and he tried several different belief structures. He decided he was going to be Catholic. He wrote to the Pope about his remorse and that he felt for the crimes. Then again, he was asked about his Catholicism, and he said, quote, "It's a great fucking religion. They'll forgive you for anything." Which,
he's not wrong.
No,
that was the whole theme of the movie Dogma.
I mean, they used to sell pardons, right?
Yeah.
Get out of hell free cards.
Buddy Jesus.
With your beard, it works. It just works so nicely. In the same interview, he was asked if he compared himself to Hannibal Lecter. And his response was, there is no comparison. Hannibal Lecter's fiction. I'm real. And
he's not fucking wrong.
No,
he's not
at all.
wrong.
Finally, in March 2010, the media discovered that Olson was receiving 2 federal government benefits from Canada while he was in prison. Did you know about this?
No.
Get ready. He was receiving $1,169.47 monthly in Canadian dollars. That's around $950 US. He received Canadian old age security and guaranteed income supplement. Because of this, the Parliament ended up passing Bill C-31, which terminated pension benefits for prisoners, which I define as absolutely buck wild and insane.
Jesus Christ. And that was in the 80s, right? 90s and 80s.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, during COVID here, people that aren't working because of COVID have been getting $2,000 a month. And that's in 2020 and 2021, not in the 1980s and 90s.
I can't. Just
holy shit.
He was literally receiving, when I got out of grad school, a paycheck of mine monthly, just for being in prison, killing a bunch of people on top of the $100,000 he had already gotten. Anyways,
when the socialized government that we have does fail and you're paying fucking prisoners that much.
I mean, if you gotta fail bad, you know.
At the same time, the American system where it's just legalized slavery is also terrible.
Yes.
But it's just gone the opposite way of what the fuck?
I mean, I just imagine him getting that payment and he just gets back from the commissary with a fucking 6-foot tall thing of ramen.
Yeah, I don't know. He's just so lucky that he murdered all these people in 81 because capital punishment wasn't abolished in Canada until 1976. So it wasn't that much before he did all these murders.
I mean, that explains the entire, just let me pull the switch. I mean,
yeah.
At a certain point, families getting letters, they should have sued the penitentiary.
Yeah.
I'm obviously Americans.
Government.
We sue for everything.
Sue the government.
But yeah, they should have sued the government.
Yeah. No, you should have sued the government because that should never have happened.
Not at all.
That's so awful.
It is terrible. So that is the lovely, beautiful case of Clifford Robert Olson Jr. And boy, was that a doozy for my first official one here on Brew Crime.
That's awful. And you know what? I should just say too, the abolition of the death penalty in Canada was the last Trudeau.
Oh, really?
Pierre Elliott Trudeau that abolished the death penalty.
Well,
and it was a close vote too. It was a vote, 130 for abolishing, 124 for keeping.
I'm going to kind of assume close. Which way everybody rolled, and somebody just happened to have majority.
Yeah, liberal at that time. Yeah.
Well, I'm assuming current Trudeau is not a rebel without a cause. So
no, I'm not a big fan of Trudeau anymore, but he would also not support.
Well, there go all of our listeners. Trudeau's no longer going to listen now, Mike.
That's okay. I don't think many conservative listeners listen either.
Certainly not anymore.
Shit, this keeps getting smaller. No.
I need people get woke.
Yeah. Fucking people. All right. Well, this has been awesome. Our first official co-hosting duty.
I'm so happy. There's so many awesome plans that we have that I just can't wait to. Oh, I can't wait to make it to Canada.
I can't. I guess I can kind of give a little hint because we're already kind of ahead with our script.
Mm-hmm.
So our next two are going to be more Canadian cases for sure. Mm-hmm. It's going to be the territory of the Yukon, which is right beside Alaska, north of British Columbia.
There's gold in them there hills.
There was. And then Saskatchewan, which is a little further over. It's like central Canada, a little closer to the East Coast.
Full transparency. Mike picked that just to hear me say it.
Yeah, oh yeah, because you cannot say Saskatchewan super easily.
What you don't know is that I'm going to call it Sassy Scatchy. So.
And like we're going to keep going across Canada, north, south, east, west. but we'll probably pop in and out of other themes and stuff too, because yeah, you can't just do one set of themes. And I really want to find a crime in Climax and in Dildo, because that would be an amazing theme too. Real Canadian towns. We'll see if we can make that happen one of these days.
Literally,
I just killed JT.
That's quite literally its own punchline. Like, my brain was trying to generate jokes like real fast, and I had nothing because that's it. That's the end of it.
Yeah, I know, right? Exactly. It might be someone stealing like flower pots, but we're gonna do it one of these days.
My head was vibrating with the possibilities.
All right. Well, we better close this out. So, if you want to send us an email, you can go to brewcrime@pacificbeerchat.com. And if you would like to find our website, find our sources and all that, you can go to brewcrime.com. If you want to find us on social media, go at brewcrime. And if you want to support us, you can go to patreon.com/brewcrime, where money goes towards upgrading equipment, making the show better, and you get one bonus episode a month and ad-free episodes. And we're looking at possibly doing video episodes for some of the stuff for Patreon only. So look forward to that. Our Patreon episode we just recorded before this is video, and we're going to see how that goes, and that might become kind of a standard thing. So yeah, if you want to support us on Patreon, you can. So shout out to our Patreon supporters. True Crime Nana, 3 Beers In Podcast, Amber, and the Faves of Our Lives. Peace.
Bye.
All cases found on Brew Crime are written by Mike or the guest that appears on that episode, and the sources are put into the show notes for each episode. We always want to give credit to the people that research the cases we talk about. Check out the store at tpublic.com/stores/brew-crime-podcast, where you can purchase gear like t-shirts, phone cases, stickers, pillows, and all kinds of other cool stuff. Brew Crime's intro was created by Mike using Creative Commons Attribution License audio from purple-planet.com, soundbible.com, and freesoundeffects.com. Logo design by Ben Greenberg. Thanks for listening to this podcast, and it's been a production of Pacific Beer Chat.
Talentless talent! Talentless talent! Talentless! Talent? Talent talentless? Talentless! Talent!
Talentless Talent. It's me, your host, Kylie Dills. Talentless Talent is a podcast about those with extraordinary talent. We're talking about conspiracy theories. We're talking to comedians. We're talking to painters. We are talking to those who make portraits. We're talking to dollhouse makers. We are talking to people about sports. We're talking to comedians. We're talking to sex workers. We're talking to models. We're talking to videographers. We have it all, including a very special pickle time. Talentless Talent is hosted by me, Kylie Dills, somebody who has no talent. So be sure to tune it in every Thursday. I'll catch you there, my Talentless Talent babes. We're having a good time.
Talentless talent!
Talentless Talent!
It's talentless talent.
Talentless Talent with Kylie Dills.
Hey, quick question. Is it recording? Sorry.
Yes, it
Because
is.
it doesn't say recording on my side.
Oh, I'm recording it on the Zoom, not on the...
Cool.
Yeah.
Got
not
it.
on the Zoom device, not on the Zoom app.
Sorry, I just wanted to make sure that we added a couple places where you'd have to cut them out.
No worries. This is usually one of the areas where lots of cutting happens.
Oh, okay. Well, Brew Crime has become a podcast of impressions. All right.
Yes.
Not true. It's not true at all.
No.
I don't know. As a kid, like when I moved to Japan for a while, we went across the states and across the time zone, and my dad was like, "You're going to be 14 hours ahead," and I was like, "Oh, that means I know what's going to happen to everybody." I was in like fourth grade, but I should know better.
Truth.
And I think that's one of those things as a parent where you just let your kid believe until they're sorely disappointed.
Yeah. How do you say that name?
Fyodor Dostoevsky.
By Rodion. What's that name?
Oh, you could just say Raskolnikov. Raskolnikov.
And I'm gonna cut this out, but I've never read that book.
Dude, it is one of my favorite books of all time. Like when I read it in high school, it was literally Crime and Punishment, like for sure. But like going back, like it perfectly details the Russian novel written way early on. Like it perfectly details guilt's destruction of the mind and the conscience.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Oh, you know what I should do is
Read it.
do the beer pairing that I forgot about.
Yeah.
Oh shoot. Well, actually, that kind of works because I can read all that quote and then do the beer pairing.
Yes.
Oh, what the hell's that? What's the name again?
Raskolnikov.
Felt by Raskol. Pause. Fucking Russian names.
It's true. You could just say Putin. It still works. It's fine.
True. What's with the junior? Like, there's a lot of that, isn't there?
It's a weird placement of a junior too.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot of that junior. Yeah, I have a junior too.
There you go.
I'm also a junior, so we'll just leave it at that's where the comparison stops.
JTGR. Man, those Russian names threw me off today.
I'm sorry.
No,
too many.
No, it works because that's a great little story.
Too
to add
many
in,
syllables. Too many syllables. Those damn Russians, man.
It's also really fucking hot in here tonight.
Oh no, it's the worst.
All right, so was my burp. 101 million mental or 100 min. Yeah, there's a chance. Yeah, well, here we go. There's a chance it could have been out of the system by the time the examinations were performed. That happens a lot, right? Like some poisons or drugs just are gone.
Yeah. Need some beer for this
Beer
one.
break. Eh? No, I'm not saying that. Right? It's interesting when a quote has spelling all fucked up.
That also could be just me.
It could be, but I was just like, oh wait. It's a lot of big words.
Shift F7. Thesaurus.
Damn legalese.
Oops.
No.
Yeah, that's how they do it, so you don't know it.
Yeah, exactly. So, quote, two psycho... damn.
Local. What a local. All I think of is, what about parfaits? Everybody like parfaits.
Oh, why did I just go blank here? Jeez.
Beer. Because beer.
Oh, God, why did I just go blank?
He must have lain.
Video parlor. No, I don't want parlor social media. Yeah, I'm not finding anything
Okay,
good. So
no worries. Okay, so I'm going with video arcades because
something like that. Yeah,
is it Fraser?
Fraser River, probably Fraser. Yeah. So 37 kilometers, 2 miles. Is
Chilliwack? Yeah.
no Chilliwack.
Chilliwack. I like Chilliwack.
The Bible Belt.
Well, not in this case.
No.
So I need to pause for 1 second.
No worries.
I need to find a charger for my headset. PD? Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.